changing climate and island living. And most Bahamians will tell you it's become a deal with the devil to live here.
I was actually fighting right here with the door. Fighting with the door, you know, to let the pressure out so that the roof doesn't go in.
Lyndon Archer was making his own deal to ride out the storm in the hopes he'd have a home once it was all over.
After the pressure came so hard, your ears start to ring, you just try and loose, the door just slammed shut, and then you just, blah, blah, everything just started going up.
And the deal paid off. Barely.
The ceiling in here it was doing a roller coaster, just up and down, up and down.
Luck and topography would spare his home from Dorian's worst.
I already cleaned up this house, so now it's just now getting materials, finding ways of what I could do to make a couple dollars to help patch things up until things start to fall in line. That's the Bahamian spirit, we're strong. I born here, I ain't going nowhere. My family was here from 1700s. That's way back, and we still have a title from then till now. So I ain't got nowhere to go.
A 25-foot storm surge that fell short of Linden's home on a hill devastated the neighborhood below. The Mud was a shanty town built on top of an old lake that flooded into a mountain of mud. It was the most vulnerable spot to ride out the storm, and it's where most of the people died.
You're coming into the ground zero of Hurricane Dorian.
Wayne Neely is a Bahamian meteorologist who's written 14 books on island hurricanes. He's considered the foremost hurricane hunter in this part of the world. He's come to Marsh Harbor to hunt down Dorian's DNA.
As we walk through this, you hear the crunch. There's a stench here that smells like...
It's unmistakable, yes.
It smells like death.
Yes, it is. And it's from dead bodies. You also have dead animals, the dogs, the cats. There was no match because they couldn't go anywhere. This area was flooded, it was engulfed in water.
After 30 years of covering hundreds of storms, Wayne knew this hurricane would be different. Dorian's lethal storm surge charged several miles inland. So when the storm arrived, he felt as if he was carrying the weight of the nation on his shoulders, delivering a catastrophic forecast to his country, his friends, and his family.
I knew what comes along with that, a Category 5 hurricane, one of the strongest the region has ever seen, and the strongest the Bahamas has ever seen. And I knew that beneath that storm, beneath that image, there was going to be great devastation in my country. I knew then that the death toll is going to be significant.
Beneath the devastation and heartbreak, Wayne looks for Dorian's atmospheric paper trail. The intense tornado-like debris and nuclear bomb landscape is unmistakable. Cat 5 storm signatures are like no other. Wayne's post-hurricane analysis is invaluable. He carefully captures it all, tracing Dorian's steps and peeling away the layers.
There was very little wind shear occurring with the storm to weaken the storm. The waters were extremely warm. It was warmer than normal. I expected it to be a strong storm, but I'd never expect it to be a Category 5 intensity storm. I don't think no one did.
Dorian would deliver a series of surprises leading up to landfall. First, it threaded a needle between mountainous Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, keeping its lethal core intact and over warm water for days. The eye would then recenter about 75 miles north, making forecast tracks even less reliable. Long-range computer models use satellite data, but that's limited and data poor. So when a hurricane is far from land, getting accurate tracks is harder, especially when there's been a significant shift in the hurricane. But there would be one more surprise: the weakest link in tropical forecasting, hurricane intensity. Dorian rapidly intensified from 150 miles an hour to an explosive 185 miles an hour in just 9 hours, a rate never seen before in an Atlantic storm this powerful. Those 185 mile per hour winds, equivalent to a 10-mile-wide EF3 tornado. It bulldozed huge swaths of Abaco and Grand Bahama Islands. Dorian's wall of water reached miles beyond the mud. Wayne arrives at this Anglican church in Abaco, a designated evacuation center. Dorian rushed through these walls with a 5-foot storm surge.
It must have been terrifying for them. Imagine that for 30 hours battling the storm, battling the water up to waist level, and you also had the winds, the torrential rainfall along with that, so that must have been terror for them.
I don't know. That's on the camera, but I didn't touch it from yesterday. It's at minus 33 sensitivity. Are you sending me out over social media right now?
That torrential rain became another one of Dorian's deadly signatures. Estimates put rain totals over 35 inches. And the forecast would become a real nail-biter as the Bermuda high that was steering Dorian shifted east, collapsing the steering currents, slowing down Dorian. A dead man's walk across the Bahamas.
Even with all the technology that we have in play, with hurricane hunters flying all the time in and out of these hurricanes, truth is, they still can surprise us. They still can create this level of devastation like Hurricane Dorian did. But now there's an opportunity to change the rulebook itself and perhaps fly drones at high altitudes to get ahead of these hurricanes.
And forecasters need all the help they can get. While hurricane track forecasts are getting better each year, predicting the rate at how quickly major hurricanes can intensify is still not well understood. But there's plenty of data that shows big storms are becoming more frequent. 2019 is the 4th consecutive year a Category 5 hurricane has formed in the Atlantic Basin. That's never happened since records began in 1851. Dorian tied the hurricane of 1935 as the strongest landfalling hurricane in this part of the world. And there's no record of a Category 5 hurricane lashing a landmass for nearly 24 hours like Dorian. Forecasters would like to track hurricanes in real time to provide more accurate data on steering patterns. Such continuous testing of the atmosphere could detect the tiniest of wobbles that could determine who needs to evacuate and when.
We cannot lift the Bahamas up and take it elsewhere. All indications are the hurricanes will become more frequent, and some cases argue that it will become more intense. And Dorian is actually showing that these hurricanes are becoming stronger and more frequent. And it's us as meteorologists to pay close attention to climate change.
Island living after Dorian is far from the perfect postcard these islands once represented. Hurricane survivors must adapt and change themselves if they still want their ticket to paradise. Now, tough questions about sustainable island living have moved to the front burner. The Bahamian coat of arms, perhaps more poignant than ever before, charging to move forward, upward, onward, together. Even after the devil storms into town. For MyRadar, I'm Chief Digital Meteorologist Leslie Hudson in the Bahamas.
Hey there, I'm meteorologist Mike Linden for MyRadar. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Don't forget to click the notification bell. That way you always know whenever we drop a new video or whenever we go live. Now, the 2019 hurricane season is well underway, but we wanted to take a look back at one of the most powerful storms on record in the Atlantic, Category 5 Hurricane Dorian. Let's get into it. We begin on August 27th. When Dorian had already strengthened to a tropical storm near the Lesser Antilles, where Dorian briefly made landfall in St. Lucia. At this time, National Hurricane Center meteorologists expected the storm to come very close to the island of Hispaniola and Puerto Rico. Dorian had other plans as the storm missed both islands. The very next day, Dorian strengthened to a Category 1 hurricane with maximum sustained winds at 74 miles per hour. By missing both islands, Dorian had nothing but warm, open ocean ahead of it. On August 30th, the eye of Dorian began to form, a sure sign of strengthening. Dorian was a Category 3 by the afternoon. By September 1st, Dorian had become a Category 5 hurricane, with the Bahamas in the line of fire. That same day, NHC meteorologists found 180 mile-per-hour sustained winds within Dorian, as well as a minimum pressure of 913 millibars, making Dorian the strongest hurricane in modern record-keeping to impact the Bahamas. Later that day, Hurricane Dorian made landfall on Great Abaco Island in the Bahamas with sustained winds at 185 miles per hour. Category 5, by the way, is anything above 157. Again, Dorian at 185 at this time. Wind gusts at 220 miles per hour and a central pressure of 911 millibars. With these readings, Dorian stamped its spot in history, tying the Labor Day hurricane of 1935 for the strongest landfalling Atlantic hurricane ever. Needless to say, Dorian was not kind to Great Abaco Island and to Grand Bahama. The massive storm began to slow down considerably to about 1 mile per hour, if not totally stationary at times. Now, at this time, the storm was seemingly staring at the eastern coast of Florida while lashing the Bahamas for upwards of 36 hours. By September 3rd, Dorian began to move north, but it was far too late for the northwestern Bahamas. The death toll is still climbing, and thousands of people are still missing as the powerful storm brought incredible storm surge as high as 20 to 25 feet in some spots. Damage costs have already surpassed $7 billion in the Bahamas. Over the next few days, Dorian weakened significantly as it began to pick up speed along the eastern coast of Florida and bringing significant rainfall to South Carolina as a Category 3 hurricane. On Friday, September 6th at 8:35 in the morning, No? Oh, it's because I know what it is.
And good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our second day of Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us on our second day of navigating the storm. I'm Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson. Joining me, of course, to my left is meteorologist Mike Linden, as well as meteorologist Stefanie Lauber. And can you guys believe it is only day 2 of the hurricane season, and we are tracking our 3rd tropical depression. We're going to give you all the information. New info just came in from the National Hurricane Center within this last hour. We're going to show you all of that coming up. And this is day 2 of our 5-part series, by the way, Navigating the Storm. We'll be live every day. Today we are here in our downtown Orlando offices, and we'll be here for the duration of the week.
And if you're new to us, make sure you're following us on all of our social media channels. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can find all of the handles right there at the bottom of your screen.
And hey, if you're watching on YouTube, awesome. But if you're not already, subscribe to us there and be sure to click on that notification bell. That way you always know whenever we drop a new video or whenever we go live.
So with this Tropical Depression 3, we've been talking about this for the past couple of days. It was Amanda in the Eastern Pacific. Now it could be Cristobal here as soon as today. Hurricane hunters are out there checking out the storm now, and they're really the ones going in to find that information for us. Very important. They go into the storm and actually collect that data. I got the chance to sit down with somebody who spent 16 years in that role, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about how exactly they go on and do that.
Tropical cyclones are a whole nother can of worms when it comes to weather forecasting. These types of storms are so complex, you could say they're a league of their own. As such, the National Hurricane Center is a branch of NOAA completely dedicated to this unique type of weather.
The atmosphere is a fluid, it's very dynamic.
Major Nicole Mitchell is the commander of the 126th Weather Flight out of Volkfield. She recently ended a 16-year tenure as a senior meteorologist with the Hurricane Hunters, a special group of pilots and meteorologists who fly right into tropical systems to gather information for the National Hurricane Center.
Going into the storm, your primary function is to collect all that fine-tuned data that the National Hurricane Center is then going to use in the forecasts. So both the plane itself is collecting data at whatever level we're flying at, things like temperatures, dew points, wind speeds.
Because tropical systems form over water, the NHC has less information to build a forecast. They're often limited to data collected from ocean buoys, ship reports, and satellites. So to fill in those blanks, specialized flight crews from the NOAA Corps and the United States Air Force are sent directly into the storm to collect that data.
And targeted spots, the meteorologists will also release a sonde, and that will drop from the plane to the surface of the water, collecting on a vertical scale, temperatures, pressures, things like that. And even the way it's blowing around the storm, that sonde.
Gathering basic weather data from inside the storm is critical to producing a good tropical forecast. Detailed wind speed and pressure data help define the intensity of the storm and can make the difference between a tropical storm or a Category 1 hurricane.
It can triangulate how fast the wind speeds are going and the wind direction to get it from the plane to wherever, it's headed toward. So all of that data is very useful in what the Hurricane Center is looking for.
A piece of the puzzle is predicting the potential path the storm will take.
Because if you're just looking at it from satellite, especially if it's not a defined eye, it can be hard to see where that exact circulation point is. There's times that it could be 30 or even 60 miles off if you're just guessing based on satellite.
The hurricane hunters send these findings back to the NHC. Analysts then put those detailed observations from the storm into the many different forecast models.
So someone actually finding the center of circulation helps initialize the models correctly so that as you go forward, all that model data is better.
You've probably heard of the spaghetti models. Well, each of those lines comes from supercomputers that perform quadrillions of equations to make a statistical prediction of the storm's future based on what's happening in the present. And when it comes to the models, the better the quality of the input, the better the output. Thanks to advanced technology, that input has gotten a lot better.
For example, in 2005, the Air Force planes were outfitted with something called a stepped frequency microwave radiometer. Such a big word. Everyone calls it the Smurf. But it can help read winds at the surface. And what we used to do, and what we still do for verification, is you would look at the surface And based on what the wind caps looked like, you would say, okay, that's 60 knots. But there would be times there would be clouds underneath you and you couldn't do that.
The SMRF replaces a best estimate with precise numbers. NHC researchers have also used data from the NOAA Corps and United States Air Force to improve hurricane modeling. After each hurricane season, the NHC goes through all the data collected with a fine-tooth comb. Every individual storm is picked apart and post-analyzed. Those lessons learned are in turn used to make the next year's forecast all that more accurate.
You know, if you think that you can take your hurricane cone and narrow it down because your data is better, that is so important, because if the forecasts are better, I feel like people take them more seriously.
Still, tropical cyclones are arguably the most difficult weather events to forecast.
There are so many small variances that can change the outcome that people just need to understand. There are very smart people working on this, a lot of data, a lot of effort that goes into it, but it is still Mother Nature, and just the nature of that means sometimes things aren't exactly what is forecast. So you need to be prepared.
That means have your plan, your supplies, and remember to be patient. A hurricane is a marathon, not a sprint.
Give everyone a little grace. There is a lot that goes into it, but there are very smart people working on the forecasts.
Steph, you pick it up.
And so that was incredible to talk to Nicole. Of course, she's not with the Hurricane Hunters anymore. She's now been promoted. She's a commander at Volk Field, but just an incredible journey to see how they braved into the storm. And it's just something that's really spectacular.
It's definitely a flight if I were given the opportunity to do. I don't know if you could say no. I mean, talk about an incredible view, right?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have a meal before getting on that flight though. I definitely wouldn't do that.
I actually did one years ago. They let the media go on them, and I went on
so
Tropical
cool.
Storm Albert, and it's so loud, and you can't hear anything, and you can't, but it's so steady that you feel. I thought I was going to feel really uncomfortable because they're such old planes, but it was really neat experience. I have friends that have flown into big hurricanes. I didn't have the courage to do that. They don't actually put the press in the big hurricanes. I mean, some of them do. The networks get to go in there, but local affiliates, get to do this tropical storms. And it was really cool. But it's such an amazing scene to see the dropson go down through that shooting and go, 10,000 feet down to the surface of the ocean, and then instantaneously they're getting readings on the sea surface temperature, barometric pressure, all that stuff. It's really cool. So, one of the things, you guys, that we talked about a little bit yesterday that we always tend to forget when we've got something coming our way is our pets. And a lot of people forget that it's not just dogs and cats, the easy domesticated. A lot of people have exotic animals, birds, bearded dragons, horses, livestock, and a lot of times those animals get left behind in the storm. So we're going to show you some tips on how you can get ready to help you and your pets navigate the storm.
They're our best friends, a walking buddy, a shoulder to lean on, part of our family, and they need a hurricane plan just like the rest of your brood. First, you need to have a plan that includes all your pets. Many shelters don't take pets, so pre-planning has never been more important. Make sure you have your pet microchipped. This permanently IDs your pet. Make sure to include a backup number on the chip for an out-of-state friend or family member, and make sure to email yourself the paperwork. Your pet also needs to have an ID tag. That way, if you get separated from your pet, whoever finds them can call you. But make sure to put your cell phone number on the ID, not your home phone number. You won't be there. Recent photos of your pet is also a great idea if it accidentally gets lost. Don't forget to snap any unusual markings that easily identify your pet. In the days leading up to a landfalling storm, make sure all of your pet records are in order. Make sure you have all of their shot records and any other important medical records you might need, and keep them in a waterproof container. Outdoor cats need to be caught and taken with you when you evacuate. If it's not safe for you to stay, it isn't safe for them either. Cats can be difficult to trap, so make sure you allow enough time to capture skittish pets. Tropical fish, exotic or small pets need provisions as well. Your local pet store can offer tips and ideas how to best care for these types of pets during a storm. Large animals like livestock also need special consideration during storm season.
If you plan to evacuate, make sure large animals like horses have all important medical records. Finding a safe location for these animals to ride out a storm requires pre-planning, so make sure to tackle that early. And like your smaller pets, make sure to have a recent photo and a reliable way to identify your pet. Special color ribbon in the mane or tail will work. And finally, if you're going to take your pet to a boarder or your local vet, make sure you pre-register. Slots can fill up quickly, especially with a storm coming. You'll also want to pack enough food, toys, and a special blanket that will keep your pet comfortable before, during, and after the storm. And you know, my friend actually owns those horses. She lives in East Orange County here in Florida. And you have no idea how much work is involved to get those big animals out. But a lot of people leave their horses. They think it's okay to let them ride out the storm. And I'm not here to judge, you know, you make decisions for your family. But she evacuates her horses, and she did for several hurricanes. But it takes a lot of pre-planning. So it's not just the horses, but our dogs and our kitties. I have cats that are hard to trap. You got to remember that too.
Yeah, that goes into having your plan ready now. And making, you know, what will you do if you're in that situation? Pre-think about all of that, so when the time comes to act, you'll already know what to do. Makes it way easier.
Yeah, a big emotional investment and a big financial investment as well to own all of those animals. But when it comes to probably the biggest financial investment one can make, purchasing a home, you want to be sure to protect that as well. And in doing research for my story coming up, we found one of the weakest points of your home is actually the garage door.
The weakest points on your house during hurricane season are typically the spots where you have the nicest views, windows and doorways. That's why you board them up or use shutters to keep things good. But the weakest point on your home, well, it's typically the garage door, because this protects the largest opening that you usually have from the outside in at your house. So to be sure that your garage door is ready for hurricane season, check the tracks. You don't want anything loose. Be sure that all of those screws are tight. And on the back of the door, if you don't have one already, you can add reinforcement bars to keep the door from bending inwards. Because what happens is, once those winds work their way into your house, it creates pressure on your roof. It's called the balloon effect. And as you can imagine, eventually it creates so much pressure on the top of your house there and on your roof, well, that eventually, as you can probably imagine, this happens. Stay safe, everybody.
Coming up tomorrow on MyRadar special series, Navigating the Storm, I'll tell you about the federal government's new program that includes more hurricane hacks and DIY tips to keep that big investment safe.
And of course, we're taking questions, so please take this opportunity, drop them in any of our social channels in the comments below. You can even send them to an email, myradarwx@myradar.com. And in fact, we're going to answer a question on air right now.
Okay, the question is, oh, I'm sorry, I think that's you, Mike. I'm not sure.
So, yeah, the question comes to us from Wendy McCall, who asks, how do you feel global warming has affected our hurricane season over the last 10 years? Interesting question, to say the very least.
So I was talking to Stefanie before we came on. You know, we interviewed Dr. Carrie Emanuel from MIT last year for our series on Hurricane Dorian, and that was a big question that a lot of people we were trying to address. This, you know, it's such a large envelope that you're trying to stuff a lot of theories in. But you know, he really is the guru of global warming and climate change. And there's, you know, we know that's a hot button issue, but the research is so strong on so many things, and we do know that even wherever you stand on that particular issue, that the ocean temperatures are gradually increasing, and the research and all of the history climatologically shows that hurricanes are getting more powerful. Now, some of the newer research indicates that we might see fewer weaker storms, and we might see more stronger category 3, 4, 5 storms. So that's where we're going to be really focusing. And there's so many smart scientists really focusing a lot of energy on this because there's more people that live in the coast now that do 50 years ago. So more people are going to be impacted by these storms in the decades to come. So they continue to funnel in this research. There's indications that the sea levels are coming up a bit. That means more inundation, more flooding. So that there's all these concerns, and we use all kinds of data, salinity profiles. We use the Hurricane Hunter data. There's a lot of research that's going into this, but the trend is, that they are getting more powerful, and we're seeing more of them.
That's true, and it's not at all a simple thing to look at. There's a reason why there's so much research going into this, because it's something that is needing our attention very rapidly. People are moving all over the country, coastal communities, inland communities, people who weren't impacted by this before are becoming more vulnerable to it. And so the sustainability of certain coastal communities and all that is very much a thing coming into factor. And even how people respond to the warnings and messages that come through on social media, very important topics. And it all ties together. It's really important. So that was a great question. Thank you so much for that, Wendy. Mike, did you want to add anything?
No, I mean, really, I feel like Leslie hit it right, the nail on the head. I mean, regardless of where you stand on it, the facts are the facts, and look at those temperatures. They are increasing. I mean, you can't ignore that. So take it for what you will. The facts are there, black and white, or red and blue in this case.
Right, and as we know, we already talked at the top of our broadcast here, it's already been a busy season. We've already, so if we get to Cristobal, which we think all indications are that our depression is going to become Cristobal today, that will be the busiest start to any hurricane season, where we've had 3 named storms, and it's only June 2nd.
2020,
so,
how about it?
Yeah, the data it supports that we are in an active, decade. A lot of research indicates that this is decadal, that we see decades of active seasons. Let me show you the current infrared imagery. Again, the Hurricane Hunters will be headed down into this at some point. You can see that there's a big burst of energy right over the Yucatan Peninsula, and then another burst of thunderstorms that's in the Bay of Campeche. Now, the low itself is kind of centered between 2 high pressure centers, so it doesn't have strong steering currents at the moment, and that's why we're seeing a lot of iffy here of what the actual path is going to do. So some of the indications is that this depression, which will soon be Cristobal, will become, will kind of drift towards the south, maybe make landfall along Mexico before re-emerging into the Gulf of Mexico. The path there is kind of hard to follow, but I kind of generally got it where you can see it's going to be generally heading towards the south and then a turn towards the north and into the Gulf of Mexico over the next 5 days. Getting stronger, by the way, you guys. Winds could be as high as 65 miles an hour as we head into the weekend. So again, a little too early to say U.S. impacts. I always try and tell people, it's my mantra, and we talk about this, and I think Steph said this in her story yesterday. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You've really got to, take pacing here because we're early into the season. It's busy, but there's some of the modeling there. I've got the GFS on there, which generally is a reliable model, not as good as some of the other ones, but it's doing a pretty good job so far based on the short time we've been tracking this. And generally, we're seeing something towards the southeast or towards the Gulf Coast. So we'll continue to monitor that. Hurricane Hunters will get inside there, and of course, the data will really get ramped up, and we'll have some much better modeling data to work from. But that's the general trend, and we're gonna be busy, you guys.
2 days into June, 2 days into the season, and here we are already. I mean, it seems like we're just in fast forward, really. Wow,
and that's another reason why people say you have to be ready on June 1st. In this case, if you were ready beforehand, that was the lucky, the lucky path to take with that. But we just need to keep an eye on this. If you're anywhere along the East Coast or the Gulf Coast, you know this routine. You know to keep an eye on this, and we're here to help keep you calm and guide you through this. It's not like, oh, we have a storm here, all mass pandemonium. So we're here to walk you through it and keep you prepared. That's the whole reason for this series, is to help you stay ahead and navigate these storms that we are more than likely to see coming up on our doorstep here and over the weekend even.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we want to thank you guys for joining us. We're trying to keep our show kind of compact and action-packed, so we kept it rolling here. We're going to wrap things up for today, but remember, we're going to be right back here tomorrow live across all our social media platforms and inside the app. You can tap the play button where you actually see our fast forecast, and we're live there right now. We'll be noon Eastern Standard Time. Tomorrow, again, we're going to have a lot more information for you to hopefully get you guys ready. In day 4, just to look ahead, we're going to have Aaron Jack, our storm chaser, Chaser is going to be telling his top stories of chasing hurricanes. Can't wait to see that. And then we also will be answering those questions. So make sure you ask us some questions, you guys. I haven't seen any in the chats that I've been checking. So ask us a question. We'll answer it live on Friday. So again, thank you for joining us again today on behalf of Mike Linden and meteorologist Stefanie Lauber. We appreciate you guys so much for stopping in, and we will help navigate the storm with you together this season.